Right, hello there, Matt from Entity BMX Shop again. Today I have got set a little gyro up on this bike, and I'm going to show you a few hints and tips along the way to get yourself the perfect working gyro brake. Check this out. So today's gyro setup is an Odyssey G3 gyro, and included in this kit we have the rotor, which is the centre part that spins around. This is your top plate. It comes with the lower and the upper cable, and as an addition we've got these little tabs which are what screw into the little head tube holes and holds all the brake together. So that's your first part of it. Now these are the little holes here that I'm talking about for those tabs, so I'm going to go ahead and screw those in now. For this job it's usually a 2.5mm Allen key, which is the right size for these little screws. Now, fitting these bits is fiddly. There isn't a whole lot of thread on the frame, so you have to be super careful. But if everything's in the right place, they should all screw in fine. And obviously where the frame's been painted, sometimes there's a bit of paint in the thread, so they're not the easiest thing to do. You just make sure that you screw them in nice and central, pinch them up nice and tight, but don't over tighten it because you will strip the thread. Same for the other side. So that is the tabs in the frame. There's a bit of a closer inspection for you, but like I say, they are fiddly and you have to be super careful when screwing them in, because this little bolt here doesn't have a lot of thread in the frame, so you've got to get it on spot on. Okay, next step is now putting the gyro on the bike. Okay, so we pop the bars off. The first thing that goes on is the rotor. Slides straight over the top. And then the next bit is the top plate. Now you'll see the top plate's got a bit of a ridge in it. If you have it so the flat plate is at the top, that'll give you a little bit more room for your brake and a bit more room for the gyro to move too. So you want to put it on that way round. Always make sure you've got enough fork there as well for your stem, and then put it all back together. Okay, so now a bit of a closer inspection. You can see you've got your tab at the bottom, your rotor gyro plate in the centre here, which is the bit that moves, and then your top plate, which holds the top cables all nice and tight as well. So now that's the gyro fitted. Now to insert all the cables and get that running good. Now obviously this bike already has a single cable, so just got to whip all of that off. Done. Okay, so first up we have the top cable. You will see one part of the cable is longer than the other. This is so it reaches over to the other side of the stem. So first things first, you insert that into your brake lever. And then connect the two cables into the stem, the long side being further away from the brake lever. Now when I fit these, I screw them all the way down at the start, because you've got all the room for adjustment when it comes to actually doing the brake at the end. So you can see the cable now goes from the lever to the 2 into the 1 bit and straight down to the gyro, where I've screwed them all in the entire way. So it gives you more cable down here to play with and maximum adjustment when it comes to setting up the brake. Now for the lower cable. So your lower cable will generally come at a standard length, which always does need trimming down. You've got all of this excess here, which is fine. So the first thing we have to do is screw these parts into the tabs in the head tube. This time round they're both exactly the same, because you want it all nice and even and flowing nicely through the frame. So I'm going to connect these up now. So this is one very important point that I like to make when it comes to setting up gyros. With these top ones, I screw them all the way in. With the bottom, I always screw them so they just sit flush with the tab at the top. Now, in my opinion, This has always worked for me, it's always made the brake work. But basically you're giving yourself the most amount of movement between the centre here, and having these little bits out, that gives it less room. With the top it's fine, but with the bottom, try and keep it nice and flush and flat there. I've connected up all the cables into the rotor here, so you can see these little balls, they slot straight on into this disc. So now it turns, and when it's all set up, we'll move up and down. So once that's all connected up, now it's time to get the cables all cut to length. And one important tip here is if this cable is too tight, it's too much work for the cable to flow through the inner, or flow through the outer, sorry. So you want to keep yourself a nice comfortable bend there. Not so it's dangling down too much, but just to literally sit flush with that frame. And then you pull the cable up to where the adjuster is, and that is pretty much how you measure where you want to cut the cable. Alright, so I'm going to do that now. One important tip, always remove the inner. I remember back in the day I used to constantly try and cut through cables, the inner would be stuck inside, and then you realise you're screwed and you have to buy another cable. So we just trim that down, slide the inner straight back through, nice and smooth. Now it can go straight back through these little holders on the frame, stop things rattling around. So now you can see it's all nice and flowing and nice and tidy. Here is your adjuster. We'll talk about this more at the end, but for now all you have to do is just connect the brake back onto the gyro. That is the fundamental of the gyro all set up. So I'll just explain it once more time. It goes from 1, splits to 2, goes down to the rotor piece here, which you can see moves round, goes up and down, from 2 back into 1, where it meets back up with the original hanger and straight down to your brake. Having a gyro does require a bit more maintenance, but when you've rode brakes as long as I have, you know, it's kind of a walk in the park, so I'm always happy to help if you need it. Okay, so now the next challenge we have is there's this gap right here in the brake lever, and that's because there's too much slack on the cable. So this is where all the adjusters come into play, and like I've said before about keeping them all flat and level and stuff, so I'm going to run you through that now. The first adjuster I always play with is the one on the top here. You can see there's a lot of slack in this cable here, so if you pull this adjuster out, you'll see that gap is shutting up now, and that will be springing straight back in. You've got these little nuts here, this is your lock nut, and that holds everything in place. So you pull the adjuster out, do that up a little bit, and you'll find that brake lever gap has gone, and the brake is now pulling back. But there is still a little bit of flimsiness in the cables. So the next thing I do is I just walk around. You can see on that bottom bit there, there's a little bit of play. Now, rather than adjusting this bottom one, I like to pull it from the top here, because you've got all of this room. So I just tweak these a couple of times until they kind of feel quite tense. Put the nuts down again. Same for the other side. Give it a tweak till they feel quite tight. Flick the nuts down, and now that brake is operating good. Personally, with this adjuster here, I find when you start messing around with this bit, this is when you start getting a spongy brake. So I always try and have this one fully screwed in all the way. Never want to tinker with that. Same applies to these bottom two here. As long as they're flush, you can see the gyro sits lovely on that edge. You never have to tinker. But you can see the gyro's got plenty of room to move up and down. Okay, so now it's just a matter of a few little tweaks, cutting the cables off and tidying it up, and we're pretty much good to go. If you find that you've got a bit too much pull on your brake lever and it's pulling all the way back here, adjusting this one here will obviously close up that gap, but like I say, it will make it feel spongy. So I'm going to move the hanger a tiny bit further up this cable, keeping it all nice and tight and tense. Perfect. So now you can see the lever does not have so much pull, and instantly the brake feels so much better already. You can see the gyro plate doesn't have to move so far up and down now. That's why it's important to keep this flat, so you've got all that room there. Doesn't matter too much about the top because it never pulls all the way. But you've got maximum clearance there too. Now just to tidy up. Right, so that is the gyro all fitted. Now, some last little bits I like to do is just put a little bit of lubrication on stuff. Keeps it all running smooth. And for any brake rider, this is so simple, but I believe that not enough people do it. Is you always want to lube just where that barrel sits in the brake lever, right there. Because it's metal on metal contact, it's going to create friction. Just a little squirt, even if you get old mate WD-40. Straight in the lever. Will make your brake feel so much better every time, guaranteed. In all fairness, that is feeling brilliant. Working just fine, exactly how I'd ride it. So to finish up, 10mm spanner again, nip up all the little lock rings so that nothing comes loose and doesn't come all sketchy, and at least I know the brake's gone out of here working perfect. Last little bit is these gyro setups do come with a little cable tie which you can wrap around, click it into place. That stops it from rattling. Your bike's all dialed. Finished. Now I'm just going to throw it out there that when I was a kid, having a gyro was like a massive statement, and it was literally the first modification I'd ever done to any BMX. And ever since then I've been addicted to fiddling with my brakes. I mean, they come on and off every now and then, but I do love having a good gyro setup, and I always like to make sure it works perfect. I'm pretty sure the customer's going to be quite happy. It's looking really smooth, and obviously some big love for Entity on there too. Thanks for the support, man. Oh, maybe a little hint to whose bike it is too. Mr. JJ. Nice one, man. Now, if you do require help with setting up the brakes and stuff, I mean, that's a whole other ball game, but I'm here to help. And you know, if you have any other questions in regards to setting up gyros and stuff, feel free to comment below, or you know, any sort of advice for your bike or any help, let me know. I'm here to fix your bike. Just to wrap up this video, I'd like to make a point that I had a nice parcel turn up this morning. A little hit on the front of the box there of what it might be. But I've just had a big fresh batch of these new lab beanies. Right in store now. This hat is exclusive to Entity BMX Shop. You cannot buy them anywhere else in the world. This is a collaboration that we've done with the lab. The lab obviously super cool and love BMX, and what a better place to support a brand than have it in a shop that supports BMX too. So if you're interested in one of these things, I'm afraid you're going to have to pop down, but drop us a message, comment. You never know, we might be able to help out and send one out your way. But I personally designed these hats myself, and I am super stoked on them, and super stoked to be able to collaborate with such a cool brand. So thanks Lab for everything you do. Anyway, thank you all for the support too. See you next time.